I've tried to script a video like this around 7 times now. Every time I did, I would stop writing right after the introduction. The truth is, there's a lot of reasons for my prolonged absence on this channel, and so much has happened that the only way to truly bring you up to speed is to go through everything. With my 20th birthday just on the horizon, I need to let myself finish this video and let you guys know everything, because truthfully, I owe you guys everything. Maybe you can learn something from my story, or maybe this video is selfish, made for the sole purpose of talking about myself for a long time. Whichever it is, thank you for clicking. It means a lot. As a warning, this is the most personal video I've ever made in my life, so certain portions of this video will cover very sensitive topics. I will provide a dedicated warning for each whenever these topics surface, so please keep an eye out and don't be afraid to skip these sections if you're sensitive to any certain topic. I understand your struggles. Without further ado, we have a lot of catching up to do. I'll start from the beginning. I began my YouTube journey in 2011, with a channel that was primarily re-uploads of videos I would watch back then. In 2014, I decided to create this very channel that you're watching, where the goal was to create my own original videos and put them up for the world to see. For the longest time, my audience was just myself. I'd make screen recordings of mobile games and sound sequences I would make in FL Studio. In 2016, I uploaded a Geometry Dash animation I made in Flash, which became the first video that was watched by people other than myself or my school friends. I continued making simple, fun videos without much care into what other people would think, and in 2017 I made my most popular video, which was also a Geometry Dash animation. This was the big hit where most people found my channel. Only a small number of people who saw this video decided to check out the rest of my stuff, but even if it was only very few people, it motivated me to keep creating even more videos for this channel. 2018 is the year that I consider as the true beginning of the Desx story. For starters, this was the year I revealed my voice to the internet. My Mexican accent was very thick, and I was using a literal $4 microphone at the time. Talk about humble beginnings. The videos I made during this era were made in a style known as storytime animation, which was very popular at the time. This is most clear in my character design. Simple, marketable, carefree, and a member of the Odd Ones Out's clone army. It was around this time where my old friend Pensy, which I'm not sure if they even still go by that name, told me that they would be switching from Skype to Discord. It took me a while to get used to Discord, but eventually I decided to create my own server. I didn't really know anyone at this time, but that would change very shortly after. In this section of the video, I would like to introduce you to a good handful of people. These are people that I would become very good friends with, and as a result would appear on my channel very often. There's 3 different origin chains that I would like to highlight, and I'll be representing each of them with a different color on this border. The first origin chain I would like to highlight is Koopasu, who at the time was known as Koopaswag. We met in a Twitch chat for a Geometry Dash streamer that we both watched. He quickly became one of my best friends, and we would talk very often. We bonded over Geometry Dash, Mario 64, and other shared interests that we had. During a conversation with Koopa, I mentioned how I was considering getting a drawing tablet to make art on, and his response was, "You should ask one of my art friends." This led me to meet someone who would become a crucial part of my life, John G. Vanadu, known at the time as John B2. We didn't get particularly close at the time, I just kind of asked an art question and then left. However, it wasn't very long before that would change. Koopa messaged me one day asking me if I'd be okay with being added to an artist group chat on Discord. I said yes, and shortly after I was added to the group chat, which would become one of the most important communities in this era, known as the Sketch Squad. Both John and Koopa were here, but I also met 7 other people I had never talked to before. Some people, namely Sam and Mangle, would go on to become good friends of mine. After a bit of a rough introduction, things mellowed out and I quickly incorporated into the group, sharing my art and my videos to the chat. This was probably the first proper friend group I was properly engaged in and would prove to be very important to my early development. Ever since Geometry Dash 2.1 was announced, mainly the song for the level Finger Dash, I've been a huge fan of the music artist named MDK, and I'd follow all of his socials to see what he was cooking. One day, he retweeted a post by this person named Circle, which was inviting animators to participate in a multi-animator project to the tune of MDK's Super Ultra. This was my favorite song at the time, so I messaged this person asking if I could join, and they added me to a group chat. There was only one other person in this group chat, and their name was Rev, someone who alongside John would become one of the most important people in my life. During this time, I would also occasionally stream Geometry Dash level requests on stream, and the popular prank people would do is send jump scare levels to streamers in effort to scare them. One of these levels was known as Fly, and I messaged the creator because I thought it was kinda funny. The creator's name was Sean, and he is another key part of this story. Going back to Koopa for a minute, there is one more person that he introduced me to. I believe it was because we both really liked Ralsei from Deltarune, because our first interactions were simply composed of sharing art of Ralsei to each other. This person's name is Omega Man, possibly one of the most important parts of this story, and you'll see why. Here's everyone in my 2018 friend group, just to recap. These people will become very important to the story throughout the coming chapters. Near the end of 2018, the small community of random people I met from different places began to manifest in my Discord server. Since I wasn't popular enough to get any random people joining my server, it basically just became the place where all my friends were. Not much activity really took place in the server, but this would change with the introduction of a new series on my YouTube channel called Question of the Day. Functionally, it's a rip-off of Jack's Film's Yai. I would ask the people in my server a question and then read out the answers in a video. This format became a staple of the channel, with a similar Q&A series called Ask Desx being introduced shortly after. All of these videos are still up, and while some of them have definitely aged with time, I think it's cool to have a time capsule of sorts with these videos. This format of community-based interaction basically made it so people would talk around each other more, and eventually, a group chat was made that was made up of people from the server. This group chat would become known as the Desx server mod chat, or just mod chat for short. The mod chat started out with myself, Rev, Koopa, and other people I have introduced like Waffles, June, Pensy, and Pointify, all of which I basically don't talk to anymore. Looking back, a lot of the group chat was just random meme posting, maybe playing a game together every now and then for a video, but it only really became a strong friend group in 2019. By then, a couple people were switched around. John, Meg, Sean, and Jayo became part of the friend group, and the itinerary basically remained the same. A couple more Question of the Day videos, another Q&A. This is at the peak of what I tend to call the YouTube era, since that was really the primary focus of the friend group as a whole. We made a good chunk of videos on my channel during this period, and it was a pretty strong group we had going at the time. The videos around this era would average around 100 views for a good video, and maybe a couple more for some of the bigger projects. Overall though, things remained pretty grounded, and most of the things that happened in that era were archived via the videos that were made on it. As the friend group continued, we started to pick up different projects that we each wanted to work on together. A lot of them never truly got off the ground, but the most important one that I want to highlight is probably the biggest project I took on in 2019, which was a 2D platformer game I made called Boxy Trial. While I did make a game before this one, Boxy Trial really took itself seriously. And honestly, revisiting it now, I think it still stands up pretty well, even if it's only in a fundamentally unfinished beta state. It was one of the first projects I truly started putting my all into, which didn't really affect the amount of videos I uploaded to the channel, all things considered. Boxy Trial continued to be my main focus through the end of 2019 into the start of 2020. And then, the funniest thing happened. I bet you thought I was going to go into the disease of 2020. Not quite. My 2020 disease is that I got into dubstep. Ever since I was a kid, I've always been a fan of electronic music. One of the first video games I ever owned was Forza Horizon 1 for the Xbox 360, and that had a ton of EDM classics from people like Skrillex, Marion, and Porter Robinson, who I still listen to today. For the longest time, I was already vaguely into making music. In 2015, I watched a video by MDK which delved into the basics of music production in FL Studio, and I made something. Music wasn't really that big of a thing for me until 2020. Everything before that was primarily MIDI slap covers and tunes I made. I didn't really know what a song was exactly, so I never really made anything of note until 2020, where I got my first external VST, which is a synth you can buy and then use in FL Studio. The synth in question was Umit Ozcan's Genesis Pro synth, which was $1 at launch. I haven't used this synth in a long time, however, it is the synth that really got me into sound design, and as a result of getting it, I made this song called Himiko Cloud, which kickstarted the idea of me making my first music album. The debut album in question was called Nana, and it was made from March 2020 through December 2021. It was primarily house music, since that's the genre of music I was most into up until then. There were a couple other genres in there, but there was a notable lack of that genre. You know, the genre that we started this whole chapter about. And this is the part of the story where it starts to play a huge role in my life. One day on the Desx server, a question of the day was made which simply asked, "What is your favorite song of 2019? And Omega Man sent a song called We Don't Play, made by Disciple. I will say, it's pretty ridiculous looking back at it now, but listening to this song set the course of basically the rest of my life. I just didn't know it yet. Initially, I just listened to the song and really didn't think much of it. I remember seeing Virtual Riot on it and thinking, oh cool, that's the Complextro guy. But since this song wasn't house music, I didn't really get into it much. This song was published by Disciple Recordings, a music label that primarily releases dubstep, specifically of the rhythm variety. I had tried to listen to rhythm songs before, primarily from me following Virtual Riot, but I wasn't really a fan. To me, it felt like a boring, washed-down bro step, so I just didn't enjoy it. I don't really remember why though, but I kept coming back to this song. There was just something about it that kind of kept roping me back, and before I knew it, I was vaguely following Disciple's output. By mid-2020, I was checking out every other release. And then, in 2020, big things happened. Huge things. Some might even say these things would shape the path I would take in life. And that's not even an exaggeration at this point. This next event really is the turning point of everything. Late October 2020, Disciple announced that they were hosting an online bass music festival, featuring sets from some of their most iconic artists. The event was called Block Party, and I caught it right at its third and biggest edition. Since this was at the height of COVID, you didn't really have any IRL-based music festivals, so this event was hosted virtually through the hit game Minecraft. This idea sounded absolutely fire to me, and I was fully down to attend the event, but before doing so, I asked some of my friends if they wanted to join me. Sam, Meg, and Geborgen were all in, though it was mostly just me and Meg since we were the only real fans of bass music in the server. During the event, we were mostly vibing to the music, yelling chat, and other stuff that you do in a Minecraft festival. However, in a social setting like this, you will eventually start paying attention to the other people in your surroundings. Primarily since this was Minecraft, me and Meg started to look for people with furry skins, and there were 4 people that stood out to us. These people were known at the time as Misco Fox, Maxi Soundscape, Marble Starry, and Taka Fox. We started chatting with them in the Minecraft chat occasionally, and eventually we decided to add each other on Discord and get into a group chat so we could talk outside of the event. The group chat was called Block Party 3 Furry Gang, because what else would you name it? We exchanged a conversation or two, and from there we really started to vibe with each other. From this point onward, my recollection of events is entirely off of my memory because, unfortunately, Misco Fox deleted their Discord account, and almost everything from this era of my life I can't really go back to. Servers that were deleted, people who now have me blocked. Things are gonna get a bit wild, so buckle up, I guess. Shortly after the group chat started to become a bit more active, Misco Fox started a server called Furry Base. It was a hub for furry musicians to share their art, learn, and chat with others. I have a couple of moments from this server archived, and the main group of people that was active in that server were me, Maxi, Meg, Draxus, Fox, and Marble. We started to become really close friends, hanging out in the server almost every day. This particular friend group was what really pushed me to start making dubstep music for myself, eventually starting a collaborative EP with Maxi and Draxus. We were making some really neat progress, working on a 3-way collab called Trifer, which was my first real venture into the rhythm genre. However, at one point, Maxi started to ghost my messages relating to the collab, and the server slowly became inactive. This happened a little too suddenly to have been natural to me, and I started to worry that something was wrong. I didn't know if I was the one that did something wrong, or if Maxi was just going through a hard time, but with time, I got my answer. Before I go any further, this is the part of the video where I get very personal about certain topics. So as a warning, I will be discussing NSFW topics, the normalization of said topics around minors, predatory behavior from an authority figure, and other generally inappropriate behavior that was exhibited by or around minors. These are very sensitive topics to me, so I'm sure that they may also be to other people. If you don't want to hear me talk about these things, you can skip to chapter 7, timestamped in the video play bar below. For those of you who are still watching this section, this is a story that I think is extremely important for me to tell, as it's the reason why a lot of things went wrong in my life going forward. So, let's rewind for a moment. In 2018, my friend Sean invited me to a server called Artist People, a private server originally created by AmorAltra. If you recognize this name, I'm sorry. I joined the server when I was 13 years old. I was no stranger to coming across weird places on the internet, but something about this place felt important to me. Beyond the friendship level, I felt the urge to talk on this server because it had a lot of pretty recognizable names in the Geometry Dash community. These people were well-known YouTubers that I watched, small but successful Twitter artists, and generally people that I looked up to. So whenever I saw people saying words like this one, or this one, I thought it was just a normal way to communicate with people. I mean, other people around my age were doing it, so why not, right? As much as I'd love for it to be, this was not the end of this pattern. The worst of it came in the NSFW channel on the server. Generally, when servers have a channel like this, there's a very strict barrier where you have to be over 18 to be allowed in these channels. By all means, these channels should not be accessible to minors. Did AmorAltra server have a barrier like this? No. The only requirement to be let into the NSFW channel was that you had to draw porn to get into the channel. It didn't matter what age you were, and you know what? This was normal. No one questioned it, no one had any issues with it. Everyone just accepted this as okay. There were people over 18 in this channel, but there were also people who were 16, 15, 14, 13, 12. AmorAltra encouraged people who were very young to draw porn to get into this channel, describing it as, quote, sacrificing your youth to him. And at least to me and certain other friends that experienced this channel, this was just kind of how things were. During my time in Artist People, these behaviors started to reflect in my own behavior, and I would exhibit them occasionally in other friend groups outside of it. Primarily, I would talk about, post, and bring up NSFW topics quite frequently, something that was normalized in Artist People, but obviously, being the age that I was at the time, something that was completely inappropriate. I should not have been engaging in this type of content, but the server made it so it was normal to lie about your age to access this content, to create it, and to talk to others with and or regarding it. And going back to where we were, in August of 2021, Maxi messaged me his concerns. I was too comfortable sharing NSFW content, engaging with specific types of it that are absolutely not acceptable to engage with, in and around my friend group, which was mostly people around my age and some people that were younger as well. At the time Maxi confronted me about this, I was 16, so the fact that I was comfortable with it and spreading that to my friend group deeply worried him. I don't remember his age at the time, but he was around 20, and now that I'm reaching that point, yeah, I fully agree with him. And I started to realize this right then and there. Immediately after this conversation, Maxi cut contact with me, and as a result, I was removed from the furry-based friend group. And for the next couple months, I really struggled to go forward. This is what I consider to be my lowest point in my life. I lost 2 of my closest friends and a community that was helping me grow as a creative. And after thinking about his reasoning, I realized, oh my god, this is a problem, because up until then, I had learned that all to be normal. I was only just then realizing the weight of these things, and now that I'd lost this close friend group, it really made me think over everything. I didn't initially realize it, and it's not something I see enough people talk about when discussing Amor, but the normalization of NSFW behavior that he encouraged in his server basically ruined my life, made me lose friends that were close to me, and drove me to a point of extreme depression, and it was something that took me years to get out of. After having lost a whole friend group like that, I was left pretty distraught. My old friend group, now known as Boofle Doofle, was still around, but I couldn't really share much about bass music in there. The only real bass fan there was Meg, and now that they'd pretty much left me for the furry bass friend group, I didn't really have any places to be active in where dubstep was a primary focus. By now, the time I'd spent in furry bass had really deeply rooted my appreciation of dubstep and given me a strong passion to create it. I tried looking for new places to talk in, and the place that I found myself talking in the most was a Discord server made by a relatively popular bass music YouTuber known as Naughty Step. After a couple months of being a regular in there, at some point I heard some people talking about an idea they had of hosting a small online festival to celebrate the Discord server's 1-year anniversary. After hearing about it, I really wanted to be a part of it, so I asked. And I almost didn't get in because the festival was nearly full and happening soon, but I was given a shot and I made a set for it. This festival became very important because as our sets played, everyone was complimenting each other's music, and in the middle of the festival, an idea surfaced. What if we made a compilation album together, similar to how Disciple does it? Pretty much everyone was down for the idea, and I made a planning server for it, which eventually became more of a hangout place for the friend group that was about to form. The community started growing, and there was a good dozen regulars on the server every day, and after the 1-year anniversary festival went so well, we all generally wanted to work on more things together, which resulted in us organizing another online festival later that year for the holidays, including pretty much most of the regulars of the server at the time. During this holiday festival, that feeling of wanting to work together only strengthened with each set, and with that passion we had, the compilation idea started gaining traction. We were now getting songs for it, and thinking about how we're gonna go with releasing the album, the name Neoluminum emerged. After a couple months of planning, we finished the compilation album, titled Neoluminum Volume 1, kicking off an electronic music label which would very quickly become the most important project of my life. Neoluminum Volume 1 launched to pretty great success, and the label was instantly put into a spotlight in the underground of bass music. We still had a long way to go, but for our first project, the fact that it's still our most popular video definitely speaks as to how impactful the debut was. Alongside it, the friend group was quite strong too, and the void I felt when furry bass removed me started to slowly go away. However, there were still quite a few things that were dragging me down and preventing me from reaching a full level of satisfaction with what I was doing. As I was slowly realizing how much AmorAltra's influence had affected me, he continued to see big success in his personal projects. Initially in Geometry Dash when he got to collaborate with Boom Kitty, and towards the end of his career in the game known as Friday Night Funkin'. His mod, known as Versus Bob and Bossip, became one of the single most popular FNF mods at the time, and from there, he saw immense success, surpassing what I think was 200,000 subscribers on YouTube. Initially, I didn't care about if he was getting success or not, but there's something very unsettling about seeing someone who ruined you and many others' lives see widespread acclaim and support from people. Forward to the end of the year, some of the friends that I made on Artist People started talking about Amor. At the time, he was getting into a bit of hot water, something about mistreating his team members or something like that. And while yes, that is not good, we also started thinking of his extremely creepy behavior and how people just didn't know about it. It was at this point where we kind of decided that something needed to be done about him. Taking advantage of the controversy he was already in, me and the friend decided to make an anonymous Reddit post to r/geometry dash, exposing some of Amor's disgusting behavior, and shortly afterwards, this post began to get shared around a lot. And even if things did end up getting quite awkward in Artist People, this was an extremely important moment for me, because after everything was said and done, Amor left the internet for good, and I was able to close that chapter of my life once and for all. The improvement that happened after this wasn't instant. Something this deeply rooted takes a long time to get out of, but luckily, I've been able to purge most of the things that I picked up from that server by now. This next one is kind of the big one. Sometime around late 2021, a longtime friend of mine messaged me about Maxi, saying that similarly to myself, they had also been cut off by them. I didn't really question anything about it, and I tried my best to comfort them. Having gone through something similar myself, I knew how it felt to lose a close friend, and I didn't want them to go through it as hard as I did. As time went on, we became closer and closer, with them eventually becoming undoubtedly my closest friend at the time. They helped out quite a bit in the early days of Neoluminum, also being part of Neoluminum Volume 1, but as the project began to develop, it was very clear that something was not particularly right. While this person was initially supportive of my music, they started to become really spiteful of me, citing how they didn't like that I was becoming better than them at music. Because of this, I started to feel that I couldn't share anything I was working on with anyone anymore, because if they saw it, they would start to break down in my DMs. This kind of behavior started to seep into almost everything that I was doing. This person became extremely attached to me, to the point where if they saw me playing a game with other friends or working on music, they'd start spamming my DMs and calling me over and over to get my attention. In response to this, I would pretty much have to stop whatever it is that I was doing and go to comfort them and reassure them. I really, truly loved this person, and I wanted to see them happy, but this behavior started to become very stalkerish, and it almost destroyed my productivity throughout the entirety of 2022 and 2023. Any chances that I had to return to creating YouTube videos basically disappeared, as I had to spend most of my time with this person, and also deal with the increasingly important Neoluminum project deadlines. I was very quickly running out of energy, and I had to deal with this constantly for almost 2 full years, which, as a wildly creative person like myself, was not so fun to deal with. I ended up powering through most of it, but in mid-2023, things were starting to become way too much for me to handle. This was around the time Neoluminum Volume 2 was scheduled to be releasing, and it was a project that stressed me out immensely going into it. I knew that it was going to be a huge project, but with everything going on in my life, I almost broke down entirely. Things became extremely overwhelming for me, and I found myself desperately trying to catch a break. Around this time, I stopped being as active on Discord as I used to be. Between being stalked by someone I was close to, personal family disputes, and having to organize a label which had a huge project in the works, I just couldn't afford to be on Discord for my own health. It got to a point where I even disassociated from Boofle Doofle, which was the friend group I'd kept for years up until then. Due to my absence, I would stop replying to my friend for days at a time, and dozens of calls and messages would accumulate from them. And while it felt bad for me to ignore them like this, my own health was rapidly deteriorating as well. So I focused on the project that had rewarded me the most up to that point. On July 7th, 2023, Neoluminum Volume 2 released, and it was worth every bit of stress that I went through to get it out. The calls and DMs from my friend didn't stop, and with the huge project all wrapped, I started to realize just how bad things had gone between me and them. I was scared to leave them because I was afraid that they would do something to themselves. I was scared of breaking my promise to never remove them from my life, but I was also scared of how much of a grip on my life they'd got. I couldn't work on anything around them. all I could really do was just sit there and be with them, even if I didn't really want to at the time. It made me miss out on moments that I otherwise could have spent with other friends that didn't drag my life down, and to this day, I still don't know what the best way to manage it would have been. It really did feel impossible to escape from this at the time, but eventually, things changed. Each day, I started taking longer breaks between talking with them, gradually attempting to separate myself from them entirely. It took a couple months, but one day I went to check in on them and found that I'd been removed from the server that we used to talk in, without much else to really go off of what happened. This sudden end to things between me and them has definitely taken me very long to process. I'm not used to ending friendships in this way, like seemingly leaving things hanging, but after making some attempts to reach out, I've come to terms with the idea that that's just how things are gonna be. Even though I knew this person for over 5 years and I cared about him a lot, it was the healthiest option for both of us to part ways. They're still out there somewhere, and they seem to have moved on to their own life, which really is the only way I really wanted. Each of us separating and doing our own things. Throughout this chapter, I made sure to keep their identity private, but if you somehow do figure it out, please don't bother them. That's all I ask. After dealing with the stress of that, it was difficult for me to get back on track. My absence from Boofle Doofle created a significant disconnect, which is something that I wasn't expecting. By this point, I had done a lot of self-reflecting and polishing of myself, so coming back to that server and seeing an overuse of the F-slur, tasteless offensive jokes, and behavior I was generally not fond of, made me just not want to return to the server. I transferred ownership of Boofle Doofle to John and then left the server. Instead, I began to be more active in the Nealuminum Discord server. Having seen a lot of success, Nealuminum gained a pretty sizable community which I really loved to interact with. Some people from the Naughty Step era followed into this new one, and soon a new friend group began to form there. A combination of the cool people we met in the Naughty Step server and newcomers who were super fun to talk to. Initially, this friend group took form within the Nealuminum server itself via the close friends role, but as time went on, it became clear that having it so closely tied to the label made others feel alienated, and eventually, we moved the friend group to a new server which became known as Lumi's Pillow Fort. This server was originally created as an escape for me back when Nealuminum Volume 2 was coming out. I was going through a lot at the time, and I isolated myself only to my closest friends for a month. I was expecting this break to only last the month, but as time went on, the break didn't just extend, it became my reality. Pillow Fort developed into a friend group that I wouldn't trade for anything. It has some of the most important people I've met in my life, spanning people I met early on like John, Rev, and Mengel, people I met near the start of my music journey like X2H, Eskv, and DXL and Irie Arts, and people I met further into it like Renipla, Convexity, Yuffie, Fortis, and so many more people that I truly love with all my heart. I went into the start of 2024 confident in who I was, hopeful about the people that I'm friends with, and excited to see where the projects I was working on would take me. Things have been very smooth since then, and I'm very thankful for everything that has led me to the place I'm in right now. I've been regaining my passion for creating, and being able to do it alongside friends I know I can trust all the way and support each other through all of it is something that's very special to me. And with that, we've come to the end of this video. All the effort I've put in for the past few years has really been paying off as of late. The label that I helped create and bring up has helped me grow far beyond the pit I fell into at the start of the 2020s. Not just that, but also the people in the friend group are extremely talented at what they do. For the person that indirectly made all of this happen, to say that we're one of the most exciting acts in the underground is unbelievably exciting, and I only want to continue pushing Nealuminum further in the coming years. We've been signing tracks from artists that I started looking up to around 2021, and it makes me very excited as to where things will go from here in terms of the label. Regarding my solo music project, I've been working on an album for the past 3 years called Digital Dreamscape. It is truly the biggest project I've ever taken on, and it's one that is very special to me. It is a huge display of who I am and what I'm capable of, and I'm excited to say that I'm reaching the end of the project now. It's currently at 92% finished. It may still take a couple months for it to get released, but the finish line is in sight, and I'm very excited to get everything wrapped up to it so I can share it with all of you. I've released some singles off the album in the meantime if you'd like to take a look for yourself. Cyberspace and Mirage and Magic Mirror and Interloper are some of the most important tracks I've made in my life, and hopefully it'll give you an insight as to how seriously I'm taking this project. In terms of this channel, I'm excited to say that I've been truly feeling the passion to create videos again recently. Breaking the silence with this video is the first step of what I'm pretty confident will be a new era of creation for me. One of the biggest things that was holding me back was how sluggish and difficult it was to work with my old computer. I only really had the time and energy to get stuff for New Aluminum done, but recently I was able to upgrade to this absolute beast of a computer, and after spending a couple weeks with it, content creation has only gotten more and more enjoyable to me. I have around 3 videos I'm working on right now beyond this one, and I'm very excited to tap back into the long-form content that used to make up this channel 4 years ago. And yeah, I think with that, we're just about caught up on everything. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me for this long. It really means a lot to me. If you're excited to see where things go from here, I'd appreciate if you gave my channel a subscription if you haven't already. I'll definitely be seeing you guys a lot more often in the coming year, and truly, from the bottom of my heart, thanks for everything. Here's to another 10.